Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. So today we'll talk about human resource and we'll have for that a special guest who is Thomas McMann from EPM Scientific. So Thomas will help us to understand what is the difference between a full-time employee, a contractor, and a consultant, because there is really a difference. And we'll do that difference for companies, so enterprises, and also for the people, for the employees. So let's welcome Thomas. So hi, Thomas.
Hi, Munir. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast today.
So great. So thank you for accepting the offer, also for being here. So as usual, I'm asking my guests to introduce themselves. So please introduce yourself, and then we can go through the questions.
Yeah, perfect. So my name's Thomas McMann. I'm from England, from the north of England, pretty much as north as you can get. Okay. And I work for EPM Scientific in Zurich, which is a life science recruitment agency. And I've been with the brand now for 3 years. I spent 1.5 years in our London office, in our headquarters, and then moved to Zurich last January to really kickstart our temporary contracts business from the ground here in Zurich. So a snippet to myself.
Yeah, so great. So how is the life in Switzerland?
Yeah, a lot different to London. I can say that. It's actually a lot more like home for me. Okay. I'm from quite a small city up north, which is quite close to Newcastle. A lot of people will know Newcastle Football Club. So moving to London was a bit different for me. It didn't gel as much as I thought. So Zurich's more like my hometown of Carlisle. So I feel a lot more at home here than I did in London.
I can imagine, yeah. And what is exactly your position or your role at EPM Scientific?
Yeah, so I manage our temporary contracting business across EPM Scientific for Switzerland. And yeah, so that's pretty much my role. We do have a corresponding permanent department as well at EPM. And EPM is a life science recruitment agency that will go through the whole product life cycle of a product from start to finish.
So great. So we'll talk specifically about some roles that you already know, like consultants, and specifically about life science business, so medical devices. And do you do also some pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, so we do medical device, pharmaceutical, and biotech across EPM in general. The temporary function within my team, which I lead, does quality and regulatory in medical device and pharma biotech. So fitting quite well, I suppose, to the podcast.
So the good SME for us here. Okay, so let's go to the meat now of the episode. So I wanted to ask you to explain to the audience what is the difference between a permanent employee, a permanent person working for a company, a contractor, and a consultant, because I think there is a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Might be a long-winded answer, but we'll start with a permanent staff member. So a permanent staff member, like yourself, like myself, has a unlimited contract, doesn't have an end date for it, works for a company direct on their payroll, has a fixed salary, has all the benefits of a permanent employee, mobile phone, cars, bonus, X amount of holiday, for example. Whereas if you look at a contractor, it's a little bit different, as they have a specific start and end date to their working time. Typically within Switzerland, they use a payroll company, so they're not on the headcount of the client that they're working for, and will use companies like EPM Scientific, for example, to work with medical device companies. They are on a typically an hourly rate basis, and will charge by the hour. So however many hours they work, that will determine on their salary. They don't have obviously the benefits, I suppose, as a permanent employee. As permanent employee will probably have more holidays, pension, cars, the bonuses, as I've said. The contractor, I suppose, they're more, well, contractors in my eyes are seen as firefighters. A company would employ a contractor when they have a spike in workload, they have issues, problems that they need to fix quite quickly, and they'll employ a contractor to come in, immediately to fix the problem. And once that problem's gone, the contractor will leave.
Okay.
A consultant can be seen sometimes as a contractor,
Yeah,
but I'll go into a bit of detail throughout. A consultant is the same as a contractor in terms of they have their start and end date. However, I would attribute a consultant somebody who would come in more strategic managerial positions, who can direct and lead a company. These people are typically have potentially had really senior director level plus positions in permanent roles and have decided to go into consulting. Typically, not as hands-on of the type of roles, because they can add more value on the strategic point of view. These guys, what I found and experienced with in Switzerland, they tend to have their own Swiss GmbH, their own companies. They cost a lot more than what a traditional contractor would have. They sometimes have multiple clients, and they require a lot more flexibility in terms of picking their hours, and they'll work in different locations. I have a sweet spot that you want to try and find, and that would typically be, there's a lot of contractors who will come in and do the firefighting, hands-on work and save the company, but they can also give a consultative, strategic level approach to the client if needed. And these contractors who can flip between one or the other, they're the sweet spot. I've had plenty of times in the past where a company's in need of a contractor, and they've hired a consultant, and it went terribly wrong.
Okay.
I've also had times where a clients need a really strategic type person to come in, and they've hired, not through us, but hired a contractor, and it's not worked out. And I think a lot of companies, especially between the contractor and the consultant, they sometimes don't realize what they need, and most of the time cause more problems than what it's worth.
Yeah, if I can say, I had the same situation that you described. So once I wanted to hire a contractor. That's somebody that is just doing what I'm asking them to do. But apparently I hired a person that has more experience, more seniority, more knowledge on the topic. And at the end, this person wanted to change the whole company and change the whole procedures and change the whole things, where at the end, I didn't want that. I just wanted them to do a technical file remediation, but not to make kind of procedure change. And this person was focusing more on anything else but what I was asking her to do. So at the end, we had to fire her because it was not really suitable for us, and to ask again for a contractor again. So I can understand your.
It's something that I think, especially in medical devices, a lot of companies get wrong. And it's sometimes I feel sorry for the consultants or contractors that potentially get put in these positions, because the client obviously hasn't really read the situation of what they need. And if you hire a consultant to come in and do something, and you want them to do the hands-on work as such, whose fault really is it? Is it the consultant for not being able to adapt, or is it the client who's looking to hire this person that hasn't understood their actual own situation, which has led to a poor hire of the contractor consultant type thing?
No, it's clear. So it may be better to have also some time to plan and to really think about what we really need and what competency we need before to hire sometime a high experienced person for doing something that is low needed to be done by a low experienced person. Okay. So is there as now we have a better understanding about the difference between those three, are there some myths or something that people think that is really interesting for being consultant or being contractor or being permanent employee? Because a lot of consultants are also moving back to permanent sometime, or what is the myth that maybe those people were thinking moving from one to another?
Well, there's a lot.
Okay.
I think from all different angles of different people's opinions, I suppose. Probably we'll start with the most common myth, I would say, is that probably on your mind as you've hired contractors, and probably other hiring managers and other companies that will be listening to this, is that contractors or consultants as well are really, really expensive. They're so expensive, we can't get this person to come in. It's going to cost far too much money. And elements of that statement is true. You know, if you're getting a consultant in at 170 francs an hour, you know, if they work, to a year contract, you're looking at 300,000+ francs. Obviously, that is more expensive than a permanent person. But for the traditional contractor, say that potentially what you mentioned that you would hire to come in to do a tech file remediation, to come in, do, maybe you needed them for 12 months just to get, a whole lot of work done. Then after that 12 months, there was no need for them after that. So that you weren't going to, prolong the contract, and that was it done. So when you obviously have a permanent staff member within your team, you obviously have their basic salary. And I think a lot of hiring managers just look at the cost for that employee. If it's 100,000, for example, they only see that as the 100,000, when really there's so much more behind the back of that. The employer contributions, which is typically 14 to 16% in Switzerland, that means the company will, typically match the person's pension, social securities, accident insurance, all the other taxes that the company has to pay for payroll in that company. That adds on top of it. You've then got the permanent employees, laptop, bonuses, which can be anywhere, 10 to 20,000, depending on what level that you're on. There's holidays that you'll get, sick leave and things. So there's a lot of hidden costs with a permanent person that I think a lot of hiring managers tend to forget. And I think when I've sort of looked at it and set off 100,000, you could easily add another 50,000 Swiss francs on top of that person's salary, with all the extra benefits and things that person gets. And if you break that down and compared to, say, a contractor, yes, a contractor may cost maybe 30, maybe even 50. You could say 50,000 more, 200,000 for a contractor for the year. It may cost more, however, you're getting so much more than the permanent employee. You're getting someone who you can get rid of in a month if it doesn't work, or maybe 2 weeks, depending on the notice period. You're having someone that is coming in to actually do maybe the work a permanent employee might not want to do. They might find it boring. After that 12 months, that contractor's leaving. They're not going to have a job. You can't do that with permanent people. So yes, they can be a little bit more expensive, but not as expensive, I think, as what people tend to think about. And when you weigh up the benefits of having that contractor, say for the project specific work that you may have, I think the extra money, if it's a little bit all the same, is definitely worth it, because you have so much more flexibility that you get with it. Typically, and they obviously can start immediately, where you've probably experienced it trying to hire a permanent person. Typically in Switzerland can take 3 months plus to find that right person.
Yeah, so you have the hiring time, you have also the training time sometimes, because you have to make this person up to speed. When you hire a contractor that already has experience, so it's maybe easier for them to help you and to do the job immediately. If it's a consultant, maybe better because you will have more knowledge than the employee, so you can speed up your project. So maybe instead of doing it within 1 year with a full-time employee, you can do 6 months without that. So it can be a lot of advantages for that. And as you mentioned, the cost is really, I think, the myth that people are always thinking it costs too much, but when you are really making the balance at the end, maybe there is more benefit to hire a consultant.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think I actually had an example 2 weeks ago, I think. We had a couple of candidates in process. One was a lot more experienced and obviously cost more. And the other one was good consultant, relatively market standard type of rate. And the manager said to us that, look, we want to take the more expensive and more senior person,
Okay.
mainly because they can do the job in half the time. So actually, I'll save money on it.
Okay.
So when managers are starting to think about how they can use a contractor to speed things up, in the long run, that should save money. The less time I think people spend on things.
That's really a good thinking. I mean, it's really seldom to have those kind of thinking in some companies. So it's really nice to have that. Is there any other myth or something?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think, some companies, not all, I've not really experienced it much, but find that contractors or consultants are difficult. They're hard work. They come in, they don't listen, they do what they want type thing. I'm sure people listening have probably experienced that at some point. But again, it comes down to hiring right. If you, interview process and you have that good rapport with the candidate, you ask the right questions, they answer correctly, you have that mutual understanding of what's needed from the consultant and what's expected, you should hire correctly. But that is something, I think, a myth that people think that contractors can tend to be a lot of hard work and can come in and not do as they're told as such, which sounds like a little bit what you had in your past experience.
Yeah, I think the interview process is really important. Not assuming that the person will arrive and know everything and will be up to speed without really getting any guidance. But yeah, it's really, I think, important to have.
Mm-hmm. I think another potential myth, maybe it's true, I don't know, is the permanent and contract / consultant divide within a company. I know this potentially can be issues in some companies. Sometimes it is and it isn't. Hiring a lot of consultants or contractors can sometimes create a rift, I think, between staff and team members. If that permanent person, you're doing the same job as a contractor that come in, they sometimes think, okay, the person's getting paid more than me to do the same job. But what they don't realize is the hidden costs, and also that person in 6 months will leave and potentially not have a job for 3 months. So they're at a huge risk and take on a lot of other elements of it. So I think that I've not personally experienced that, where there's been a divide between permanent and contract, but I know that is something that is a potential myth or could happen. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah,
in your career with the divide or conflict?
Yeah, not conflict. It's more when we hire. I mean, it's more about the effect of group, I suppose, because I had a company where I hired only one contractor or one consultant. And it was this person really melted with all the team. It was really fine, so it worked well. But in another company, we hired a group of contractors because we had a big project and we had to do some work. And there was more a specific room for those people to be all together. And they were not really melting or discussing. So there was this kind of rift, as you mentioned, between those two teams. Which was a pity, but at the end the manager wanted really them to be focused on the project and to be really working and not to be disturbed by other employees. I suppose it was the reason why we had this connection, but it exists.
It's an interesting point, because I think it definitely comes down, I think, to the company's approach to hiring that contractor and how they see and how they think of that contractor and if they can add value. We have clients that we work with that on the contractor's first week, they book in meetings with different people in the organization so they can introduce them to new people, obviously help them make friends, and embed them into their culture and into their society as such within that organization. And I think that that's a fantastic way to onboard a contractor, because I suppose hiring anybody, you want to make them feel at home and that they can be themselves. Whereas if you're locking a contractor in a room or in a basement as such, yes, to do the specific job, but it does potentially create that divide. And people might just sort of look at them and be like, who's that person type thing.
Yeah, you can imagine.
So it's interesting.
Okay, so now what is exactly for you as you are working specifically with those contractors or consultants? So what is your strategy to select them to then show them to the companies that are really needing a person that is knowledgeable for their project? So what is your strategy?
In terms of finding people, or just in terms of how we search for candidates and how we sort of operate on a candidate basis?
I mean, for me, it's more about what is the relationship with the company that is giving you maybe the information, what they need, and you looking for the right person and then presenting that to the company.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say with the client need as such, our main strategy is to meet that person face to face, to get a full understanding of what they're really looking for, understand their requirements, understanding if they need a contractor or a consultant and what they really need that person to do, if they need to come in and firefight or if they don't. That helps massively with trying to select the right person. Understanding what they need, understanding the company and what type of person they would want in their team and how the dynamics would fit. I think a lot of people sometimes don't think of that when they hire contractors, but if you want the right contractor and you want that, the no waves to be created as such, you need to keep that in mind. So I would say once we've met the manager, if possible, or have a screening call as such for the position, we do things sort of backwards in the way that I sort of run EPM. So we essentially do all the work before we get the position. And by that, it's more of tracking consultants and tracking talent in the market, and knowing where they're working, knowing when their contracts are finishing. And then you basically just play a game of chess or whatever game that you like to play where you match things up. Because when we get that position, our first thought process is, okay, well, let's go to our talent tracking lists, our hot lists, who's available. And within that first hour, we should have, 3 consultants, contractors, who we can send down straight away. Or if not, speak about on the call, or if you're, meeting that person face to face. So we sort of do all the work backwards. Our standards are that when we have that job, we should know someone straight away, a couple of people, 3 people, who could do it. And that fits into obviously why you would hire a contractor, because you want that person quick. So that is how typically we operate within the client and then the candidate as such. And that takes months, potentially months and months to get the right people on tracking and knowing when their contracts are finished, and keeping in touch with them, building, relationships, because you have to have, you as a candidate as well, I suppose, in our industry, you need to be able to trust people, especially if you're working with them. And recruiters typically get bad press for how they operate, and we want to have a really good relationship with that contractor before we send them. We want to know exactly what they want, how they work, the money, all that done. So it's a painless, smooth, quick, easy process once we get that position on. And that in turn makes, when we have the contractors, I suppose, working for clients, they're happy, they stay, they're a good fit, and that obviously responds into us having positive feedback from the client.
No, it's good. I think, as we said, so being specific, I think like EPM Scientific will help also to really find the right candidates that are really specialized in this area. And I think it's important, really, the relationship between the company and the recruiter to really they have the right understanding of the role of the candidate, of what they want, just to not lose time, to not because as you said, the process can take months, and if at the end we hire somebody and it's not a good fit, we have to restart from zero, and it's not a good situation. Okay, Thomas, so where can people can find you then?
So LinkedIn, EPM Scientific. We've got Instagram, Twitter.
Oh, you have also
YouTube.
Instagram, great.
Yeah, I think we do. I might be wrong. It might be under Faden International, which is our mother company.
I will follow you then.
Yeah, but yeah, just EPM Scientific in normally all the social media platforms. Okay. I think you'll have it in the notes and stuff as well.
I will put that in the show notes. Yeah, I will ask you to send me that all, and I will put that in the show notes so that people can go directly and see that. Great. Something else to add?
No, not for myself. Just first of all, I suppose, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And just, I think if anybody wants to reach out to understand more, or if they don't know if they need a contractor or a consultant, please reach out. Obviously, I'd love to help anybody that needs it.
Great. So thank you for that. Okay, so thank you then for joining this episode, and I see you. Goodbye.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.